Okay, it is preparing. You know, you got to wait for Zoom to do all of its things. Okay, welcome to Tech for Good, Las Vegas chapter. My name is Dr. Victoria Boyd. I am the Nevada organizer for Tech for Good. I'm also an author. I wrote the book Webinar Secrets. I also am the founder of the Philanthropreneur Foundation. It is a nonprofit that supports other nonprofits with training, services, resources, all types of different things. I'm also an independent consultant and help individuals start nonprofits with all of the paperwork and filings and everything they need to do. Also wrote a book called Board Bound Leadership, which is board training. So I'm heavily immersed in the nonprofit sector, but my first career, I actually was an educator for 32 years. Go figure. I taught dance for 28 years and then was, and then was the state consultant, educational consultant. I did educational broadcasting, teacher development, staff development. We had an educational television network, which I was an executive producer of some shows. In fact, we had the Royal Theatre from London. We visited there. We went to the Globe Theatre, and then we did some, it was called Shakespeare in the 21st Century. Okay, but that was so much fun. But that's not what we're here to talk about today, but I wanted just to give a little bit of background of who I am and what I do and why I think I can talk about what we're going to talk about today. Okay, Sarah, I'm just going to ask you a question. How much energy have you spent switching to webinars since this big, what I call global change, the world changer of the pandemic?
Quite a lot, because we run, I'm with Charity Comms, which is a UK professional body for people working in the charity sector who specialise in communications. We have about 750 member charities. Great. And we run about 70 in-person events a year usually. So it's been a quick turnaround. We actually had a big conference scheduled for the end of April. So we hosted that on Zoom and had about 500 attendees, which we wouldn't be able to do in person, and they were from all around the world. So it's been a real steep learning curve, but really good for us as an organization, I think.
Absolutely. So. And I actually have been in the webinar. In fact, my Board Bound is a full webinar training, and that's been out since almost 6 years. It's been out for a while. And so, in 2014, I also wrote another book called Wow on Webinar Secrets, which was the first rendition before all of these new things happened. And so I've been using webinars, especially as an educator. You have to use PowerPoint and all of the tools, not necessarily webinars, because the whole e-learning has exploded. It's been around for many years, but the e-learning. But today's presentation is really going to help nonprofits understand more ways that they can use webinars to engage their audience. So I'm going to switch to screen share because I have a full presentation here. At any time, if you have a question, please just speak up. I'm one of those teachers, ask the question when it's on your mind, because otherwise, hey, we forget. Excuse me. Okay, I'm going into screen share now. And let me get this going. Okay, we should have the very first. And so what we're going to talk about, the why and how nonprofits can use webinars. Because I work with a lot of nonprofits, I often come across organizations that are sort of scared of technology. And oh, our programs just won't fit that model. Guess what? We all learned that all these programs can fit that model. So I'm going to be talking about internal and external advantages for funding and growth. It's something that's near and dear to me. This webinar is brought to you by the Philanthropreneur Foundation, which is a co-host of Tech for Good Las Vegas, and Dr. Victoria Boyd and the Webinar Secrets. I always put in, when I'm doing e-learning, an e-learning tips, because many people, they they come on, but there's too many distractions out there. And so I always tell people, unplug, turn off the phone. I don't even have my phone in the room with me this morning. And I locked the dog out so he couldn't get in here. So take plenty of notes and definitely ask questions, because as a webinar, many times you're not live. And if you don't write down the notes and ask questions that you maybe can email, which you can with me, they tend to just disappear. Okay, was 2020 really a game changer? I like to start here because many people who have been in business and the industries that have used webinars for a long time, so that they were like, well, this is, it's really just, we just continue doing what we're doing. But for many people, I want to say over 70% of those in the world, they were experiencing using technology to communicate for the very first time. And it became a live or die type situation if they couldn't pivot. I have a training center, a live training center here in Las Vegas. We did live training in a room, face to face. I had to make that pivot. In fact, we have now switched the whole training center to a recording studio for webinars. So we had to come up with how can we still serve our constituents, but yet do it in this new model. This is a new model that I don't think will go away. I think it will go back eventually to face-to-face, but the virtual platforms will always be there as another layer to enhance what we're doing. So the value of webinars, obviously they're cost effective, they will save money, they're time effective because yes, you have to develop it, but you have to develop live training, you have to develop programs. So once you record it and keep it, it's there forever, and you don't have to do that whole time for money type scenario. A person's time is money. Plus you can reach so many more people. Just like you, I have you here from the UK. I have just, we've gone global. Your audience exponentially can grow. And many nonprofits will question that, but we're just a small, we just want to serve here. But many times they need to actually assess what their products are, because they might be able to transition into a global platform and benefit many people. So that's the value I see. Top uses for webinars. And I say all of this, and many nonprofits will think, well, that we're not an expert. Yes, you are. You're the authority. And what happens is the community wants to hear from the authority. They want to hear you as the leader or in this nonprofit. What do you have to say? And so you are the expert or the authority in that genre. You can demonstrate things. You can demonstrate what you're doing, what impact you've had. Lead nurturing is a term that business use, but lead nurturing is donor development. You have to get them into your pipeline in order to even talk to them about donating. And you just can't come out and say, give. You have to nurture them. As we say, steward our donors, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but you do need to do lead nurturing. And there's a lot of tools, e-marketing strategies, autoresponders, all of that. But webinars are a key one to tell your story. Customer upkeep. Yes, you have customers. Nonprofits are for-purpose businesses. That's what they are. And so if you do have customer upkeep, it's always great to do a webinar on new things that you're doing in the organization, new resources, what you have already. And so it's informing those that are already in the pipeline what's happening. And of course, training. Training is a big one. I'm biased, but training can be in almost any platform, internal and external. And I'll also go into more of that. And of course, staff development, which is a big challenge for many nonprofits because they tend to go, oh, well, let's just skip that. You know what you're doing. You know what we're about. We'll talk about that later. All of these things are for nonprofits. All of these items came from the business world, but they're for the nonprofits too. Why webinars? And let's talk about external and internal engagement. Let's go with the external. You can reach more donors. You can tell the story. You can let them see the impact that you're having. You can actually recruit more volunteers, and it can support your programs. Internally, you can use it for staff, and again, volunteer orientations, programs, what they should be doing. And a big one is the board. Many times we skip the orientation or the annual training and all of those things for boards, but doing webinars for the boards consistently will really connect with them and make them feel like they're really needed. Let's talk about some external advantages. You will help and educate them because you want them to understand, and those that understand give more, support more, and become more engaged. Engage. When you educate them, they become engaged. And guess what? What you want them to do is become energized. And so those are the three pillars that I really stand on when you're doing webinars. You need to educate them, engage them, and energize them. Webinars for donors. Now, it's often, you feel you need to have those face-to-face, you need to talk to them. But the first place donors really go to find out more about your organization is on the web. They will go to your website. They will go and look at your social media platforms. They will go to look at the impact you've had in the community. And what that is really doing for them is showing them how their support is used. And that's really the key thing that they want to know. It's helping you steward your donors, helping them understand so that they will want to give to you. So education is a key thing when you're working with donors. And many people, they don't think of it in terms of educating, but that really is the baseline of what you want to bring donors in. This is the lead nurturing section of it. You're educating them on a certain aspect of your organization. How do you get them engaged? Storytelling. You have to tell your story. And love my nonprofits to death, but when they want to do a big campaign, especially if it's an appeal or something like that, and they start talking about the woe is me, oh, if we don't get this money, our doors are going to close, we just can't exist another 6 months if we don't raise $50,000. That's not what donors want to hear. I'm sorry, they don't want to hear that you're in trouble. They don't want to hear that you're struggling, because in their mind, all that does is say, will my dollars be spent the way they need to be spent? Are they managing their finances correctly? Why are they struggling at this point? Yes, in this day and age, because of many nonprofits having to close their doors for months, and there is that struggle, but still, tell your story. Tell how you're missing serving your constituents, serving the people that need your help, versus we're going to close our doors if we don't get this money. So become more about storytelling, the idea of how you want to move further, increase your impact. And this will engage donors. It will even engage the community and volunteers. So engage them with your story. And then, how are you going to energize them? You've already got them with the hook of, okay, they know what you do. They've heard your story, and it's touching their heart. It's hitting those passion points, either pain or passion. So then give them your impact. This is generally an annual report where you put it out and talk about who you serve. I just grabbed this image, and it's one way of doing it, But with each of these small boxes, you can actually add a story to each box, because you can, we produced 1,600,000, that big number up there, meals produced. And then talk about how you did that. You have 657,000 volunteers. Talk about what they do, how they serve. And so it's taking your annual report and including it with your impact, and then folding it into the story that you tell. And that will truly, truly energize anyone that's listening to it. I know I once again, I'm sort of biased. I get energized when I hear those stories, because to me that means internally management, operations, systems are working well for them. More external advantages. Volunteers step up when they're asked. Yes, we all have our own personal passions in different areas and things we support. But generally, if you don't tell them that you need them, they just think, okay, well, they're doing good. You have to tell them that they're needed. And so as we do this, you will give the story of what the volunteers do, the value they have with your organization, the impact they can have in the community, and please come in and be a part of this great organization. So once again, it's telling a story, but it's focused on the volunteers and how they are going to have a great impact in the community by serving your organization. All of these can be done via a webinar. So as we are, okay, come on button. I'm trying to click the next spot. There we go. Technology. More external advantages. And this is the one that, it's near and dear to my heart, because I love doing training. Yes, I was doing it face-to-face, and I had a blended format. I had virtual and face-to-face. Face-to-face can be still stimulating, just like we are on a live webinar right now. You can still interact with your audience, but then you also have to develop it so it transitions when it's not live. And I will get into live versus recorded in a few minutes. But you can deliver your programs to the community via webinar. It has to be planned out. It has to be constructed correctly. The ways of putting educational webinars together is just like doing educational content or curriculum. But your programs can be delivered to the community, especially if they have a learning component to it, if you're building skills or you're developing personal development and things like that. Yes, it's sort of hard to deliver those types of resources that are perhaps helping the homeless, feeding families. But once again, you can deliver how to receive this help through a webinar, where to come and get it. If it's available in what is called public domain platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and different things like that, many, I hate to say it, homeless and those that are struggling will go to a library to use the internet. Many of them still have their phones. Many of them still use technology, even though they might not have a roof over their head. So don't feel that a webinar can't reach your constituents. And even build into your message that if they know someone that is not receiving it, doesn't have internet, doesn't have those types of platforms, that they should share that information to help others. And so what you're doing is building your network, your community advocates out in the community via this platform. Internal benefits. So many here that could be used. For example, onboarding across many things. You could use it for onboarding for staff, volunteers, the board. You could provide information on company policies and benefits. You could provide role clarity. What are their roles and responsibility? You could facilitate training. You could induct them into the organizational culture. And also you could help form social connections with colleagues. All of these are crucial. They're important when you have and are working with a staff. Your staff might be volunteers. You might not have paid staff. And so all of these are even more important because they need to really feel appreciated. And so all of these different areas could be put into a webinar platform where they are sent to a specific access portal to get everything they need. You can always deliver the initial one or once, twice, 3 times a year, every quarter live. But by having them in what I call a toolkit, internal staff toolkit, where they can access it anytime, makes your life easier. The whole organization just becomes a good working system. And so when you're thinking about how can I use webinars, here are 5 examples right here where you should start thinking about putting together webinars to facilitate some of your operations and systems. Additional internal benefits. I mentioned it before in terms of onboarding, but ongoing staff development. Hopefully in our mind, we all want our organizations to grow. And that means it might be bringing on new platforms, technologies, a lot of different things. And so staff development should happen on a regular basis. And sometimes it's just, what are the newest trends? What are some of the newest platforms, the new technologies that are out there, new resources? New resources for nonprofits are popping up all the time. And so it's important that everyone be aware of them so that you can take advantage of those things that are, that will really benefit the organization. And many nonprofits really zero in on just fundraising. But fundraising is the end result of great systems, great operations, and great management. And if those 3 things aren't working well, your fundraising will suffer. So from Board Source, which is the big research company, they list fundraising, marketing, and leader adaptability as the top 3 challenges. I'd like to switch those around and say leader adaptability is the first one, marketing is the second one, and fundraising actually should come in number 3. But it's a mindset. Fundraising, they think money will solve everything, but it's a system that you have to put together. Staff development will really help solve that. And if you have it in a webinar platform, when you see people struggling, even or if they're coming on brand new, having that piece of information, that tool right at your fingertips is quite important. And so putting together a staff development toolkit could be, I would say, a lifesaver for some of these nonprofits that might be struggling right now. More internal benefits. This is something that is also near and dear to my heart because as I mentioned earlier, I wrote the book Board Bound Leadership, which is the 4 essentials of leadership, governance, assessment, and fundraising, the roles and responsibilities. The board, I hate to say it, is often overlooked in terms of orientation, onboarding, annual reports, annual training, because this organization might, well, they're the board, they should be directing themselves. Yes and no. You still need to have resources and tools for the board to use. Otherwise, they might get disillusioned, turned off, or just sort of become what I call the tea and cookie board, where they come once a month or whenever you meet for the tea and cookies. They're not really there to be leaders. And so really showing that you care about their effectiveness, that they understand what their role is, will really help boards be more effective. So an orientation and onboarding are actually two different things. Orientation is more about their roles and responsibility. Onboarding is about giving them understanding of who the organization is, the culture, and things like that. Annual reports, the board can use them to present their annual report. I talked about an annual report earlier with all of the different impacts. They can use a webinar. And how powerful is it for a person to see the chairman of the board or board members on a webinar live, face, where you can actually put a face to a name, talking about the impact they've had for that organization. The power of being that authority, the expert and authority, another key point I mentioned earlier, is so powerful to bring validity and credibility to your organization. And those things will really boost fundraising. It will support it tremendously because many donors look at the annual reports for the impact and how their money will be spent. Annual training is another one. Once again, just like staff and everyone else, new things happen. Right now, every board should be going through training to look at what is the new landscape here? How do we need to, I'll use the word pivot that everyone's using. What is our organization going to look like now that we need to do something in that internet or landscape that is digital? Because that is, at some points, the only way they're going to reach some of their constituents, some of their donors, some of the people that they serve. And so new training, and here I am, needs to focus on some of those different concepts and implementation strategies. Excuse me. We're going to talk webinars now after I take a sip of water. Delivery is just as important as content. The good, bad, and ugly. I love this picture because you really can't see his face. You're just sort of looking at the window. This is an example of bad delivery. Okay, so we've all been on Zoom. We're on Zoom right now. But what has happened has been a Zoom effect. And that Zoom effect has really impacted business professionalism, credibility, and just being taken seriously. Yes, we were caught off guard. You can't leave your house. You can't do this. You can't do that. And so we resorted to using different video conferencing platform. I'm using the term Zoom lightly. Zoom has become that term like Google. Like when you do an online search, we say, go Google it. Zoom has become the catchword for any video platform. And just as a disclaimer, there are many, many platforms out there to use to create and have video conferencing. But because we went into what is called a crisis situation, we've gotten really relaxed with how we present ourselves. I hate to say it, I saw one of our commissioners here on a Zoom that was on the news broadcast. Literally, her hair was all over the place. She had on a wrinkled t-shirt. And I'm like, oh my God, you're still a professional. You still have to bring forth and represent the company that you are representing. And so we need to get back to that professional mindset. Yes, we were very forgiving and we understand, yeah, sometimes we just have on the top and we have on a pajama bottom. but as a professional, organization, and even in the business world, your presentation must go back to being professional. So let's not let the Zoom effect fool you to think that how you do a presentation can be overlooked. So, delivery essentials. You're going to make sure that it's professional, and then you're also going to look at the environment that you have. I'm sitting in, I'm at my home. Because this is early, I didn't get down to the office because it's only 7:30 in the morning here. But I have a home presentation area. I could have used a virtual background. I decided not to because I wanted to demonstrate what a home situation might look like. But I do have at the office like green screens and lights and external cameras. I have whiteboards and all of these different things to create the environment that I want to create. So these are two essential delivery components. So under the umbrella of being professional, as the presenter, don't start by apologizing. Oh, yeah, I've never done this before. No, you are the professional, or understand that how you come across might be the first impression. And we've all heard about, first impressions really set the stage for how people perceive you, your credibility, your validity. So once again, the presenter needs to come across as being quite professional. And then there's the platform. Because there are so many different platforms, choose one and then experiment with it to learn its tools and how to use it, because you don't want to be fumbling through the keyboard and say, wait a minute, I'm looking for it. We were very forgiving in that Zoom era. I'll call it the Zoom era, where, I did a big family Zoom reunion, and, I had some aunts that were like, oh, how do I turn off the volume? They're hollering, and we have everybody talking, and, we're like, okay, everybody go on mute. Where do you do that? And so that is not the case in these situations. The presenter will understand the platform and how to manage it and all of the participants within it. And then what experience are you giving or presenting or offering to your audience? And so that's the professional side of it. Your environment is your space, lighting, cameras. In my book, I do some examples of where they have the light or the big window, or they have the camera tilted so high that all you see is the ceiling fan sweeping around. Or the person is so close, I hate to do this, but it looks like they're peering down a hole. There's different protocols or different ways to ensure that what you're doing comes across perfect. So space, lighting, camera, all of those things need to be thought about in advance and planned out as a part of your presentation package. Yep. Poor delivery will ruin good content, because people just can't get past not looking at what's going on back there. Oh, I said, what do they have in their bedroom? I wonder why they didn't make their bed. Okay. Little things that have actually gone through my mind as I've watched different presentations or just been on Zoom networking group meetings. I'm looking at what's behind them. One guy had cellos lined up on the wall. I was like, ooh, that's really cool. I was trying to look at the musical instruments, so I got distracted, and I'm supposed to be paying attention. So those things are very important. Let's talk about live versus recorded, because there's advantages to both, and I think you should do both. Live is just like here. I am talking live. You can ask questions in real time, but there are some cons to it, because if something were to happen, I would have to take care of it right now. And this is being recorded. And so it becomes a part of that documentation or that presentation. But also it gives that feel of being connected immediately. Recorded is you can make it the way it needs to be. It becomes more of a professional piece. If and when you get really good at doing presentations, you can do a live and record it as you're doing it, and then use that platform as your webinar in the toolkit. I always recommend do both. If you do a live and it came out great and you love it, save it, keep it, use it. If it did not meet your expectations or you didn't get to the key things that you knew you needed to get to, go back and record it and say, that workshop is now available at. But do both. Have both of them. You can have program and delivery via live and recorded platforms. And with all of the tools that are on the internet now, it's so easy to do those things. I actually prefer recording all of my presentations because I'm a perfectionist and I want to stop it and do, like I would have stopped it and taken my water and not had my cough here. The wind here has been crazy and it's dry, and so my throat is totally dried out from, I'm in the desert. So I would have stopped, taken a sip of water, and then resumed the presentation if I was doing a recorded one. It's all personal. Some people say all of those little things make it more genuine and authentic. So those are like personal choices. So as I said, it's not either or, but you want to do both to grow and evolve. And the more that you do, the better you'll get, or the better it will be, and easier to be. And even in some organizations, you might want to designate a key person to be the deliverer of your web content. They might just have that soothing voice or that small screen presence that you might need for your organizations, but do both to grow and evolve. So what's next? And I'm gonna take this water here. Let's see. I can tell you a whole bunch of things. Because when you're doing a webinar, it's not just about throwing things together. You might need help, you might need support, you might need assistance, guidance, you might need some of that second thought of what to do. And so that's where Webinar Secrets can help. Now, do you need this? I could say no. But if you want to do what is called a checklist of how and if you have all of the key components, I would say take a gander and look at it. I'm going to sort of go fast through these last elements because yes, this is my pitch. This is how I do, but this is also information to help you create yours. If you are a DIYer, that means you're going to do it yourself. You need to develop solid content. And that is using multiple intelligence, adult learning, and e-learning theories. That means all of those need to be folded into the content. And there's different ways of doing that. You also need to deliver it professionally. Set it up, get good lights, action, your environment, and do it. And so when you're looking at the production, you'll look at your space setup. Using a virtual background is often great, but if you're using a PowerPoint, it's not that critical, because if you're doing full PowerPoint presentation, your image doesn't even show there. I prefer doing what is called the mashup, where there's a little box of the presenter, the talking head, and the PowerPoint, just as it is here, except there wouldn't be other guests in the studio or in the webinar. And so that's because it makes it real. There is a voice or a face to that person. That's why I prefer that. And then, will you need technical assistance? usually in most webinars, or like, for example, this Saturday, I'm doing a Zoomathon. I have 9 speakers. Well, in May I did one, I had 18 speakers. This time I shortened it because that was a marathon and it was a little bit too much, but we're doing 4 hours with 8 speakers. And when you have that many technical things, I always get an assistant or a co-host that is behind the scenes actually working all of the buttons, like they were admitting people into from the waiting room. They were checking and responding in the chat box while I was managing who was the next speaker coming up and making sure that their screen share went live and that they were the spotlight speaker. These are all little features that are on Zoom if you're doing a live type thing. But those technical assistant pieces will make it so much easier for you by just, having somebody else as a co-host in the background that, they're just clicking buttons for you. So those are things to think about. Now, if you don't want to worry about any of that, that's where the Philanthropreneur Foundation or Dr. Victoria Boyd could help. We could, develop content, we could help with production, and even have the studio set up, even if you are far away, because there's ways that we can create the virtual background for you, put it on Zoom, or even better, we could actually create and record your training for you. So it's just something to think about. To me, all entrepreneurs, nonprofits, coaches, and consultants, you need to have webinars as that additional layer of who you are to reach and help and train your network of who you're working with, whether they're your service people that you're serving, or the constituents, your board, your volunteers, and all of that. So I'm just going to skip through here. Your next step would be 1, read webinar secrets. Develop your webinar yourself and record it on your own, or do it your own and then record it in our studio, or we help you, or we complete the whole thing. I'm just going to, this is our location in Las Vegas where that's the front door, but I'm going to open this up for questions. Yeah. If you have any live questions now, I'd really like to take those, but if you have questions later, you can always send them to me. But I see we have another person, Paula Beatty, and I was in the middle of presentation. Paula, you're here with the Las Vegas Tech4Good chapter meeting. You want to introduce yourself? And I'm going to stop my screen share. Hi, Paula, are you there? Okay, well, maybe she doesn't, she has to turn off her mute button, but okay. Any questions? It could be off topic because this is a meeting of Tech4Good. Do you have any tips, ideas, or moving forward? That sort of concludes what I have to share today.
I thought that was great. Thank you so much. I thought it was really interesting. A really good pulling together of everything that people might need. I mean, one thing that we've seen, which has been quite interesting, because we talked a little bit before the meeting started about how being online can open up your audiences internationally, which is fantastic. And it's more accessible. For example, with our Zoom meetings, we use a transcription service as well, so that people who might have accessibility issues can view it too, which is brilliant. And also we find that our charities that we work with who might have, say, different chapters or different locations, it's sort of been a good leveler because everyone is in the room at the same time, rather than, say, their head office being in London or New York and other people being conferenced in. It means that everyone is on the same playing field and everyone can feel just a bit more equal and able to contribute, which I think has been a really nice side effect. Yes,
absolutely. And I'm surprised that many more nonprofits don't use the electronic platforms that are available, because so many of them are free. Yeah, some of them do have a cost, but with the accessibility of many of the platforms where they can do training, because, for example, the Zoom platform, you can record something up to 30 minutes and have a meeting up to, and record it for free. And with multiple intelligence and adult learning, you shouldn't be doing a session more than 45 minutes anyway, because we tune out,
Yeah.
and that is a part of the assistance and guidance I give. If you have a lot of programming, that goes on many hours, then you break it up into small chunks, because people will watch it on their lunch hour, in the middle of the night, like me. And so the 8-hour training that I created, no, it's not 8 hours, it's 8 individual modules, and none of them are more than 60 minutes long. And I tell that up front as one of the features and benefits. None of these last more than 60 minutes, so you can, map out your time and get it done, and then pick and choose when you do the next one. So those are all important aspects of creating webinars. Any other ideas, or this is a chapter meeting. It looks like it's just you and us now, you and I. But that's fantastic. I am so happy to meet you. I have to tell you to put your information in the chat box so we can stay connected. And I did put the training video in the chat box. The PowerPoint entire is in the chat box.
Great. Yeah, I just think it's been really interesting, and it'll be interesting, as you said earlier, about how much, when things sort of do start to slowly go back to in the real world, how there will definitely be a combination. Because if we do get back to real life, big conferences, we will definitely have the ability to either live present them so that people can access them digitally, or record them so that it can be on demand. Because it's just the way things are going, and people are getting so used to it now. It's really helpful.
I would really love to see it not go back to the norm. Because that was, I hate to say, time consuming and costly for nonprofits. If they really look at how they can truly transition many of their services and what they need to do, systems, operations, and management, to webinar platforms, they will really actually grow and benefit from all of that. So my goal, as a consultant to help nonprofits grow is, okay, I've been saying it for years. In fact, all of 2019, I was actually researching to do a big virtual conference, but I got such resistance. And I was like, wow. I mean, I was sort of shocked at the amount of resistance. I just can't do that, Okay. But then all of a sudden 2020 happened. And now it's like, wow, okay, I can do that. And so I'm coming back almost with the same story, but in a new era, that people are now actually understanding the value of what these recorded platforms, webinars, and presentations can really do.
Absolutely.
I was so excited to present this. Like I said, I kept it right at 45 minutes. So glad to meet you. I hope you enjoyed the Tech4Good Las Vegas meeting here. What time is it in the UK, by the way?
In the UK, it's almost 4:30 in the afternoon.
Oh, okay. So I'm early in the morning. You're closing down your day. So I'm getting ready to leave and go to the office now. But thank you for coming on. I hope you will join us again next month. I have no idea what the presenter will be or who it will be, but I always find somebody really interesting. Check out some of the old broadcasts. They are on I put the links on our Facebook page, Tech4Good, and in our meetup group. So this one will be going up. It will also be on YouTube. We actually recorded live on Facebook. So I'm going to shut down this meeting, stop this recording, and thank you for attending the Las Vegas chapter of Tech for Good, brought to you by the Philanthropreneur Foundation and Dr. Victoria Boyd, LLC. Everyone, have a great day.